Thank you for staying with us. It's been over a week since the Sudan Army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces in Sudan have been at war with each other. The conflict, which started when an internationally backed plan to launch a new transition with civilian parties was floated, has cost hundreds of lives lost, thousands of people injured, millions displaced from their homes. It has also made many non-indigenous desperate to flee to their home country. The chairman of Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri-Erewa, says there are over 3,500 international students stranded in Sudan, asking to come back home. The federal government have also said commencement of evacuation may begin today, with the students going by road to a nearby country and then by air back to Nigeria. They urge Nigerians there to be patient and stay put, while cautioning against any mobilization plans from the National Association of Nigerian Students, which may put them in further danger. Joining us via Zoom is a Belgian-based public affairs analyst, Collins Nweke. Good morning. Thank you for joining us at TVC Breakfast.
Always a pleasure, Veronica. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you as well. Now, the federal government is saying that it will begin evacuation of some of the students today. Now, this is coming on the heels of both warring factions agreeing to a ceasefire which began midnight. I wonder what you make of the ceasefire, because this is the third time. The previous times had, the ceasefire couldn't hold. But there are concerns with regards to if the ceasefire agreed to would hold, and then Nigeria will be able to carry out its evacuation process.
The ceasefire, if it holds, and that's a very big if, will indeed provide a corridor through which Nigerians stranded in Sudan could then travel by road to the closest airport, the nearest neighboring airport, and then the evacuation process begins. Now, I do hope that no one is under any illusion that a ceasefire would mean that, that there are rays of hope that things are going to calm down, and then stepping down any plans to begin immediate evacuation of Nigeria. Because like you rightly pointed out, Veronica, this wouldn't be the first time we heard of ceasefire, and something always happens. So such pronouncements are no longer credible enough to take into consideration in any plan, particularly the evacuation plan that the government of Nigeria has announced. You see, it has remained just an announcement, and we heard this yesterday. We heard this the day before yesterday that they are planning. I want to be upfront about this. Nigeria is not the only one struggling to evacuate their citizens out of Sudan. Even in Britain, they are having the same issues. Even America is not finding it very easy. But there have been success stories like Kenya that, have started evacuating their people rather than just talking about a plan to do so. Now, the difference between the countries that have succeeded and those that are still struggling is because those that succeeded had a plan. So when you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And I hope this will be the lesson that, countries that are still struggling to begin the evacuation will take out of this episode.
Yeah, how come this crisis is taking everybody by storm? No pun intended. These two groups, the RSS, the Rapid Support Services, or whatever they call them, and the de facto army on ground under General Boham, and the other one under General Hamdan. they have been at each other for a while. And how come nobody anticipated that there was going to be a breakdown so suddenly and a panic atmosphere?
Thank you. That was Sam, wasn't it?
Yes.
Mr. Ngweke, are you still there? Right. Network challenges, but I believe he was just trying.
I can hear you now.
All right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good. Okay. Now, I was just asking if that was Sam or Mike. I didn't quite
Sam.
get the voice.
Sam.
Sam, okay. So, well, I couldn't have missed that unique voice, couldn't I? Well, Sam, you are spot on. You see, what we are dealing with here, and you see, when I talk about this, I'm not talking of just Nigeria, because like I mentioned earlier, Nigeria is not the only country that is struggling to, have a seamless evacuation operation. Britain is struggling as well. America, hasn't quite succeeded. So the question is, why this reactive approach when the warning signs had been there for a very long time? Now, why didn't they start planning earlier? That is proactivity, and that is how successful governments run operations. In Kenya, where things appear to be succeeding because they have actually carried out their own initial evacuation. What they did was that as far back as 17th of April, they had already put a plan in place, which included primarily, and I hope this is something that Nigeria, for instance, can take lessons from. They already provided a local number right there in Sudan where people can call, get information about what is going on, what they should do or shouldn't do. And back in Kenya, they also had a domestic number where relatives of those, stranded could call to get information, ask questions, and, there is then a well-coordinated communication plan. Now, in the case of Nigeria, what we are getting is a situation where the Nigerian National Association of Nigerian Students in Sudan, when they, for lack of information, they begin to make their own self-help plan, and then you get a disclaimer from the embassy of Nigeria telling people not to go by those plans. So it cannot be that operations are not streamlined and strategically organized. I hope that, and we have been having this hope each time there is a crisis. Nigeria goes into a kind of a reactionary mood, and then we hope that they could, take some lessons out of that episode into a new one and start planning earlier. So yes, it didn't take them by surprise. The only thing that was missing is a good plan.
All right. I wonder what you make of the role of the African Union in trying to calm the nerves in Sudan. We saw a truce brokered by the United States and Saudi Arabia, but a lot of persons said that the African Union should have been the one in the forefront of trying to resolve all of these issues in the first place.
Well, Mike, you and I have, discussed this over and over again. The African Union, obviously, is one club of old men, who are simply there to protect one another's interests. Where they are meant to act, they withhold action, especially if it will not be in the interest of the person they are, trying to protect, who is part of the conflict. So yes, there are very many reasons to actually assert that the African Union is highly compromised, and that being the case, it's probably not a good idea that they move in there, to mess things up as they often do, and that's a shame. I'm not saying this, by way of applauding the current situation. It is deplorable that they haven't been able to get their house together to be able to put an Africa-centric solution to the ground one that is tailor-made for the African continent. Because what happens is when you allow others do it, they miss the nuances, and once you begin missing the nuances, then the targets are for you to miss as well.
When you say African-centric solution, how do you mean?
What I mean is that there are countries bordering Sudan whose airspace, for instance, and I'm giving a specific example now, whose airspace, are safe. Now, and also the borders. I will take the example of a Nigerian student who managed to travel by road to one of the neighboring countries, but was not allowed to get into that neighboring country, therefore into safety, because he didn't have the visa for that country. And so there was this back and forth to see if she would get the visa. Sub the intervention of the Nigerian embassy wasn't immediately succeeding because, of course, it's not easy. Everything is disorganized. Now, an Africa-centric solution is one where the African Union organizes the table, and with one single decision, they will grant visa on arrival access for those in crisis area. They will also open up the airspace automatically for evacuation purposes, rather than individual countries having to do bilateral arrangements with the different countries. When the decision is taken in unison by the African Union, that is actually acting in a purposeful manner, and that is an Africa-centric solution. Just to leave it by one example, Veronica.
Now, many people will be curious. Sudan, Nigeria, Nigerians, other than students and the diplomatic community, give us a sense of the what do they call it? It's a kaleidoscope of Nigerians living in Sudan. What do they do there? Who are they? What is the community like? I mean, well, we have to get a sense of that to know, what they are going through. What are they going to leave behind? What dangers are they facing at the moment? What is at stake?
An average Nigerian by character is international in terms of exposure, in terms of outlook. So, the saying that anywhere you get to and you don't find a Nigerian there, you got to run because something must be wrong there. The same holds true for Sudan. Nigerians, apart from going there for intellectual purposes, to study, there are a number of Nigerians that are university dorms in a number of universities in Sudan, some on long term, some actually either on sabbatical or on short-term projects. There are students, like you rightly pointed out. There are others who also go in there to do business, okay, and come out as well. I think with episodes of this nature, it becomes very important to begin to sensitize Nigerians about the need to always be in touch with the Embassy of Nigeria anywhere you go. Because you never know when danger comes, when it's going to hit. the essence and the different embassies across, the world have continued to emphasize that we need to know that you are here. Simply give us a call or stop by, get your name written down, contact details and all of that, so that when things like this, happen, we have a centralized data through which we would know, which Nigerians are here and, what they are doing and how to get across to them. So, Nigerians represent different sort of sectors, but in Sudan, working, doing business, some short-term, some on permanent basis, some are married to their, nationals. So when this crisis affects Nigerians as much as it affects, Sudanese, because we do have Nigerian Sudanese, we do have those that make their daily living there.
All right. We're looking forward to a 72-hour truce, and as it is, we hear that about 2,800 Nigerians will be evacuated today, beginning today. Do you see this 3 days as an opportunity to completely evacuate Nigerians who are willing to leave Sudan within the period?
A very golden opportunity, Mike, because like I alluded to earlier on, the golden opportunity it offers is that it creates a safe corridor through which people could travel by road to any of the 4 neighboring countries, on the condition, of course, and I like to believe it when I heard the Minister of Foreign Affairs say that they are working to, secure to have access to the airspace of, some of those countries. So a safe corridor by road up to those countries will then, give them opportunity to fly. Yes, Nigeria hasn't got, its national carrier like Kenya does, and so that made it easier for Kenya to evacuate their people by air and by road, but we do have Nigerian Air Force. We do have, for Christ's sake, the presidential, fleet of aircraft. This will be deployed in situations of this nature, not to talk of, private flyers. We remember the case of South Africa, where Peace Airline went in there to evacuate, Nigerian citizens. I know that, other independent private airlines will be prepared to do the same thing if the government organizes the table properly. So yes, the ceasefire period is a golden opportunity to evacuate not just 2,800 people, the figure that we had, but the 5,500 Nigerians that we understand are currently trapped in Sudan.
There are concerns with regards to how safe this corridor really is going to be, because there have been reports of attacks on convoys trying to move people out of Sudan, and they have encountered robbery, looting, and all of it. And Nigeria is saying it's looking at the Egypt corridor, so to speak, and there are those who have looked at the timing it would take, about 4 hours, to move these persons out of Sudan to Egypt. What concerns do you see with regards to the safety of this corridor when you look at the number and the timing, the hours that it would take to move these persons out of Sudan?
We're talking of a war zone, and so even when you talk of safe corridors, when you talk of ceasefires, temporal truce and all of that, they always come with, certain degree of danger. You can rule that out. But in comparison to, an active combat situation, it remains a golden opportunity, one that has to be used. Now, I would imagine that Nigeria would, have, its intelligence out there. So they gather information about what is going on, they analyze, the information. That is the essence of intelligence. So that too will guide them. I believe that Nigeria has capable hands to actually be able to assess the situation up to the minute to ensure that the safe corridor is judiciously used. But yes, you are right, Veronica, the danger is always there because we're dealing with a war zone.
It's a very terrible thing going on there in Sudan, as we all know. Many people don't have a sense of the nature of this crisis. There was an al-Bashir who was a dictator for about 2 decades or so, and there was a clamor for democracy and for him to go. Al-Bashir left, and we have these two people, Burham, who is the de facto head of the army, and Hamdam, who runs the RSS. And we see that everything has broken down. Is this problem something that we are going to be living with in Africa? Because the one in Sudan, in Libya, has not died down yet. You know, there's trouble all over. In fact, one of the leaders in Libya is actually funding and working with the RSS General Hamdan. So are we having in Africa kind of what I can call a strong man's envy, where, you know, when a strong man leaves, you're looking for another. Everybody wants to be like the strong man that leaves because he has already given birth to strong men. We have had it now in different African countries. We've had it in Europe with Yugoslavia and all of that. So what do you think?
Yeah, what I do think, Sam, is that, yes, this is not, a typical or a specific Africa virus. You did mention Yugoslavia. Yes, beyond Africa, there are, pockets of countries that experience the same thing. But of course, Africa stands out, in its unfortunate credential of, growing strong men. In the past decade, there had been up to 50 coup attempts, out of which about 12 succeeded. Well, the vast majority failed, but for Christ's sake, 12 is a lot, and I believe that, the African Union, like I alluded to in responding to Mike's question earlier, has a role to play. The other regional bodies like ECOWAS, have their own role to play. And as long as they remain compromised in terms of not really acting in the global interest of Africa, these conflicts will not find, sustainable solution. So it's a whole mess, but I believe that there are a few good men, within and women within these institutions, and such good men and women are being grown and groomed on daily basis, and so one cannot give up hope entirely that the leadership will be gotten right, and then the strong men who should be retired and retired permanently.
All right, Collins, what scenarios of resolution to this long crisis do you see from what is going on now and the response from the international community?
Well, if there was any country at all that felt that the Sudan problem was a problem far from their bed, it has now become very clear to them that what affects one person in any region of the world affects the rest of the world. Even if it's just, the simplest, the most obvious of refugee crisis, because with this crisis, many people are going to be, made refugees, and they will travel to other countries. So through global effort led by the African Union, I believe that it is not impossible to get the two warring sides down to, on a discussion table, on a negotiation table.
Collins, are you there? Right.
Should lead, even as disorganized and as compromised as they are. I believe that some few good men could be found that will lead the negotiation, bringing both sides together. Because ultimately, when the guns have gone silent, it is on the negotiating table that the crisis will be resolved.
But Collins, do you think that democracy can thrive in Sudan?
There is the potential for democracy to thrive in Sudan if it takes the Sudanese idiosyncrasies into consideration. I believe that trying to import Western style democracy into Sudan or any other part of the world for that matter is a humongous mistake, one that we have seen their repercussions play out, be it in Libya, be it in Iraq and Iran and other regions of the world. Now, people have their own characteristics. They have their developmental, challenges, and their democracy should be tailor-made. It should be cut according to the size of those countries, rather than copying, the American or the Western democracy as the beacon of hope for other parts of the world. So I think the same thing applies for Sudan. And then first, don't forget, 2-3 years ago, there was a national conference that was to give birth to a constitution there that would take the different elements of the conflict into consideration in building a new a new Sudan. Now, I believe that it has to be resurrected. That should be priority number one once they are able to get a permanent ceasefire, that, a national democratic, institutions cut according to the Sudanese idiosyncrasies are actually developed.
Well, we always try to use the expression homegrown democracy, but democracy is a human ideology. It's about people living together. I remember in primary school, the book we read about world history, world events, I've forgotten what the course was. It's described, says civilization is the art of work of human beings living together in a peaceful environment. That's all it means. It means a cooperative way of living. And that's what democracy is about. Is a problem with our culture, is a problem with our history, because even the whites, before they had democracy in Europe, they had what you call the divine rights of kings. They had the feudal system, which predominated before we had this democracy. Even the democracies we had in the one in England, which was supposed to be even the fountainhead of the democracies in Europe after the experience with Greece and all of that. Even the time of Greece was it was a democracy of generals. So I don't know where we can say that the democracy is not in conformity with our culture. It's just that, as I say, that we are not even ready as a society to move away from our feudal morass.
our feudal morass is not something that we need to completely give away for our brand of democracy to thrive. And I believe that is part of the problem. The problem is in the nitty-gritty. Yes, democracy is all about living peacefully with one another in a community, realizing that there are common goods that you need to share, but then you need to reach some understanding on the sharing formula by a manner of speaking. That is not alien to African culture. I mean, every African society has its own, process of taking decisions through, be it through democratic gerontocracy, where the old masterminds, the whole affairs, or through kings and queens. In some democracies,
Collins,
Britain, for instance,
I'm afraid we have to wrap things up here now. We have run out of time, but we must thank you, public affairs analyst Collins Nweke, for your time on the program.
My pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.